Hello and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Joan Woodward, and I'm honored to lead the Travelers Institute, which is the public policy and educational arm of Travelers Insurance. Today's program is part of our Wednesdays with Woodward, a series we started last year to explore issues impacting our personal and professional lives in these really extraordinary times. We're pleased you're here today, and we hope you'll stay engaged with us. So check out the chat feature. You can join our email list. You can connect with me directly on LinkedIn or watch past webinar replays at thetravelersInstitute.org. A recording of the session will also be available on that website. So let's get started. As I said, the links will be in the chat feature. I'd like to share a disclaimer about today's program. So innovation has become a critical priority for businesses. The speed of change has accelerated, and if you're not staying ahead of the consumer preferences, you have risk of getting left behind, and no one wants that. So how does a company build innovation into its DNA, especially a company who may have been around for a long time like Travelers? That's a big question for us. And we're incredibly lucky today to have three fantastic speakers giving their unique perspectives on how we do just that. We also want to give you some tips to do this in your business and learn from maybe some of our mistakes. So first, we're thrilled to have Travelers' own Executive Vice President and Chief Innovation Officer, Kevin Smith. Quite simply, Kevin is driving innovation in partnerships with all of our businesses and providing leadership on how we do that within speed, but also with impact. Impact and speed and velocity are very important when it comes to innovation, and Kevin knows all of these issues very well. He also chairs our Travelers Innovation Council and is a wealth of knowledge on the subject. He has served in a number of leadership capacities with us over the many years he's been with us. Most recently, he led our international businesses, operations in Canada, UK, Ireland, and Brazil. Thank you, Kevin, for being here. Then we have Sabine VanderLinden. Sabine is co-founder, CEO, and managing partner of Alchemy Crew, a venture lab that's helping drive disruptive business models and using innovation and experimentation. Sabine has over 20 years of experience in insurance. She was the CEO and co-founder of Startup Bootcamp InsurTech in the UK and the InsurTech Hub Accelerator in Hartford, Connecticut. She has worked with over 30 global insurance companies as part of these organizations, accelerating growth in more than 70 ventures that she's been involved with. She's a pioneer in building innovation ecosystems, a co-editor of InsurTech book, and a top 50 InsurTech influencer. Thank you for being here, Sabine. Then we have Beth Maerz. Beth is Senior Vice President of Platform, Customer Experience, Innovation for Personal Insurance at Travelers, leading strategy on new business capabilities and innovation efforts. Beth is recognized as a thought leader and a global partner to insure tech startups around the country and around the world. She has influenced and transformed many in the insurance industry. She helps identify and explore new areas where Travelers can innovate to meet the future needs of customers and of our agents. Beth's many accomplishments include helping establish Hartford's InsurTech Hub, delivering a new insurance product here at Travelers for millennials, starting our first venture with Amazon, and leading a Travelers partnership to plant more than 1 million trees. Welcome to our speakers. I'd like to say a special thank you to our partner today for today's program, the Master of Science in FinTech at the University of Connecticut, which prepares students for the world of financial services, technology, including InsurTech. We're grateful for John Wilson and his leadership, and welcome to all of our UConn students, alum, and faculty. So a note on our agenda for today's program, we're going to hear opening comments from each of our speakers, and then we'll reconvene for a moderated discussion. Then, importantly, we'll take your questions. So put any of your questions in the audience in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. And don't wait till the last moment, put those in as we're speaking through the program. So before I turn it over to Kevin, I want to take a pulse of the audience. We've been doing these recently, if you've been with me on our Wednesday sessions. We do some audience polling. So everyone take a look at the screen. Our first polling question for everyone out there is, my current organization has a culture of innovation. strongly agree, somewhat disagree, or strongly disagree. So your culture right now, is it of innovation or not? Let's see what the results are. So, this is good news. 50% and 37% agree, either strongly or somewhat agree. And we have a very optimistic audience with us today. So only 14% of our guests disagree with that. That's a fantastic outcome. Okay, next question for you. Since the onset of COVID, the pace of change in the insurance industry has decreased, stayed the same, slightly increased. What do we think? The pace of change in the insurance industry. All right, let's take a look. Thank you all for your input here. It's helpful to us. Increased or dramatically increased the pace of change. So about 80% of us are saying it is definitely increased, and some say increased dramatically. Okay, excellent. So, Kevin, what do you make of these results before you kind of get into your presentation? Does this surprise you here?
Well, first of all, thank you, Joan, for having me. It's a pleasure. I like you, am pleased by the fact that folks are optimistic about the state of their organization and sort of the mindset that folks have. I do think the years leading up to COVID, there was a pace of change that was certainly increasing, and I think what everybody just expressed around the experience of a global pandemic and the changes that it's brought to society and to business, I think that accurately reflects it. I would have checked the last box on that one. I think it's accelerating quickly. So I think our audience has a finger on exactly what's happening.
That's great. That's great. I would agree with you. And certainly we'll talk about this later, but the money that is flowing into this innovation space around the globe for InsurTechs is really exciting, as well as all the thought leadership that's gone into it, especially in your case, Kevin. So thank you for being our leader on this, and I'll turn it over to you. Perfect.
So maybe we'll, the future is in fact now. So like we were just saying, there was clearly a increasing pace of change in our industry leading up to the pandemic, and the pandemic has just accelerated so many trends that were sort of gathering pace beforehand. And so you are left with a sense that the future is actually not sometime out in the future. It's actually now. And so I thought what I'd do is just as a start off to the conversation is I'd lay out a few categories that we think at Travelers are important change in our industry, and the first one is going to be certainly changing distribution. So I think the first big shift within the context of distribution inside the insurance industry is clearly being driven by customer preference. So Joan alluded to that earlier. Society has adopted almost overnight a preference to transact digitally when it's easy and when it's available. And in our business, the same can be said as we transact business with our agent broker partners, for example. Now Beth Maerz, my partner at Travelers, has been at the center of a bunch of those efforts at Travelers, and she's definitely going to touch on more of that later. But what we've also seen, besides large established companies like Travelers, the desire for digital services has certainly benefited the many new digital natives that are out there, the InsurTechs and full stacks, that, as Joan just referenced, have been fueled by, as recent as the first quarter of 2021, a $2.5 billion, investment from venture capital, et cetera, that is interested in seeing that continue to grow apace. And so that was a record quarter for InsurTech investment. And it seems like it shows no signs of abating as we stand right now. And I know Sabine is definitely going to talk in more detail about that later. The second shift, though, inside distribution I think is really driven broadly by the growth of digitization across industries. It's the emergence of platform and ecosystem-based embedded insurance opportunities. Now, some like Deloitte predict that to grow to maybe $100 billion market at some point. And classic examples of that we're seeing in the marketplace are a cable company like Comcast offering insurance to their subscribers, or auto manufacturers bundling insurance coverage with a vehicle purchase. There's just more and more of that happening, it seems like almost on a daily basis. And finally, the third big shift in distribution, of course, we couldn't talk about distribution without it, is just the sort of unabated march of consolidation that has happened and has been happening in traditional distribution for many, many years and only continues to accelerate. And of course, the recent, biggest example of that would be the $30 billion Aon Willis transaction, which is of course still pending, but is certainly a mega merger. So with big changes in distribution accelerating, you might ask, what about the insurance product itself, the risks that we're trying to cover and protect folks against, and the products that they need to have. So to me, in this area, there's really three sort of big areas to watch right now. The first is sensors. So sensors are increasingly everywhere and in everything. And the amount of data being generated to track risk exposure and to use potentially for risk management and mitigation is unprecedented by orders of magnitude in terms of what used to be out there. So there's clearly an opportunity, and some might say a need, to redefine insurance products to actually take advantage of all that data. And I think a great example that we're seeing in the industry right now is the emergence of what's so-called usage-based products that are definitely on the rise, and they capitalize on all that data that's being thrown off. The second and related topic inside risk and product, of course, is cyber. With so much physical moving to digital, including, by the way, a lot of the workforce in the last 18 months, cyber is increasingly a critical risk factor for businesses and individuals alike. Recent incidents that we've all witnessed and experienced in sort of critical supply chain areas like energy and meat, software, and even in insurance and insurance broking are only really begin to highlight the economic implications that cyber may potentially have or will potentially have. And finally, while I'm calling out some obvious risks that need a product focus on, you have to talk about weather, right? We're all watching the changing dynamics globally, almost on a daily basis. It's almost on the news every day. And we're also beginning to, in the industry anyway, use really sophisticated tools like sophisticated imagery and analytics to augment our underwriting processes to help us handle claims in the events of major catastrophes. And certainly we at Travelers are very, very focused on that. So the ability to understand and make decisions from huge volumes of data is really critical. And so that immediately takes you sort of to the third thing I think that's really important, which is this changing environment around data and AI. So the pandemic has definitely accelerated digital investments and digital interactions, leveraging all this new data that I'm talking about in very sophisticated AI. A good example of that is, since the pandemic, we at Travelers have seen a dramatic uptick in the adoption of virtual tools to be used in claim handling, and those were things that customers tended to be hesitant to use before the pandemic. But as they've adopted them, fortunately, we had them ready to go, and as they've adopted them, they've come to really love them, and that's certainly a case where we see a lot of that not going back to the old way, but in fact only accelerating. And it's not just in claims. We're seeing artificial intelligence used to fuel much faster decisions on the front end of the business. Our recent partnership with Groundspeed is an example of that. It's allowed us to, they're a really interesting startup, and it's allowed us to process new and renewal transactions in hours rather than rather than be measured in days. And so that really, certainly accelerates what we can do in the business and what we can do with our agent and broker partners. So these capabilities are helping us all get smarter. They're helping us all get faster. But the question really is, will that in fact be enough? And so that takes me to our sort of fourth key item, which is, as ever, the changing cost equation of the business. So as these new insurtech full stacks and startups that Sabine is going to speak to partner with and square off against the large incumbents, it's clear that the winners are going to increasingly need efficient operating models that not only are efficient, by the way, but have the agility to capitalize on evolving competitive dynamics as these new distribution channels evolve. They're going to need the agility to operate on lots of different platforms, increasingly embed insurance for new ecosystem partners, but all the while acquiring and servicing customers as efficiently as possible. And that, that's not an easy task for anyone, but certainly I think we've got a whole industry, as witnessed by the polling, that's beginning to be focused on it. So I think that's a really good thing. So how have we at Travelers tried to organize for success in this area? We're a 160-year-old company. I like to say we started out in the era of horse and buggy, so we're not unfamiliar with having to make pretty significant changes in how we do business and what we insure. But we really break it down. We break our approach down into four buckets. The first is really we call future. It's building a vision, inside our organization of what we think the future will likely be, what the options are, and what the opportunities are. And we really start at the most senior level of the organization to do that. And we work really hard to get everyone aligned around that. The second thing we've spent a great deal of time doing, and it's in fact how I first met Sabine many years ago, and that is finding and assessing capabilities in companies across the globe that can actually help us get there. We've moved out of the era of everyone building everything on their own to clearly an era of partnership and leveraging capabilities that are just constantly being developed across the globe. And we're very focused on taking advantage of that when we can. The third piece is that we think is important, really important actually, is experimenting with velocity. Not something that traditional insurance companies maybe we're always good at, but we've definitely focused a lot of time and effort in making sure we learn how to do it effectively, because it's really, really important with such change happening around us to be able to learn fast and at a low cost in order to stay as agile as possible. And finally, in a large company like ours, we spend a bunch of time educating and sharing across our 30,000 employees. We think it's really important to bring all 30,000 along on this journey, because it is a journey of tremendously dynamic change. Now, one of the advantages that we happen to have is as a large established company is scale. And therefore, we've got the ability to invest to position ourselves for the future. And so let me just close my little remarks by saying, we think a lot about, increasingly about, whether it makes sense for us to build or partner or buy. And we've done a lot, I think, of each. And, 3 examples that are good ones, 2 of which I think will come up today. One of which I cited already is Groundspeed, where we partnered with a really promising startup. The first is Traverse, which I know Beth is going to speak about. That's something we built inside Travelers to be responsive to the dynamics that are happening in the outside world. And then the third is Buy. A few years ago, we purchased the #1 writer of digital small commercial business in the UK called Simply Business. And again, because we've got the scale and the wherewithal to do that, we think a lot about those 3 options as we try to augment our skills and our capabilities. So, in an environment that's this dynamic, both established players and insurtechs are going to have to continue to innovate to succeed. That's the one thing that's certainly clear to us. Now, with that, I'd love to turn it over to Sabine to explore how successful startups have indeed done that. Sabine?
Thank you so much, Kevin. And hi, everyone. I'm really thrilled to be with you today. So let's get started and let's find out how a unicorn innovate. So first, I would like to start with a quick definition. So unicorn are high growth ventures with a valuation of over 1 billion. And based on Sabine's site, a variant of unicorns includes decacorns, or companies valued at over 10 billion. So think about Payment, Grab, Didi, Uber. Those are examples of companies. And if you want to have a quick look at the Wall Street Journal, you will find that there is also a $1 billion club that you can find there. And then you have the ectocorns, or companies valued at over 100 billion. There were Coinbase on this list just a few months ago, which has been fluctuating, but you will find Tesla and the like of Ant Financial fewer companies at this stage. Moving on, where are those companies located? So today, well, no surprise, 60% of fast growth companies are in the United States. So think about Bright Health, Collective Health, Ethos, Hippo, the Zebra. All these are located in the United States and are unicorns. 25% are located between China and India. There we have AI Innovate in the AI space and Policy Bazaar in the distribution space. Then Europe comes third with 9% of all these growth ventures. We have been really moving really fast during the past few months, and we have quite a number of unicorns, including Alan, Bought by Many, Shift Technology, Tractable, WeFox, and Zego. So we are all very happy. Moving on, we'll talk about the facts. There are 850 companies over 1 billion valuation. But I think right now, I was checking the numbers, those are probably around 100 unicorns with approximately 40 decacorns. On average, takes 9 to 12 new unicorns per month. So we see on average 9 to 12 unicorns every month being created for the past 5 years. And when a venture is at the stage where it's going to raise 150 to 210 million, it is likely to reach its unicorn status. This is based on average. And it takes 5 years for a company to reach that stage after their Series A. One thing I love saying to startups is that they will need to reach a lot of investors for their founding round. So on average, a unicorn will raise money from 18 investors. So they have to be nice to them. But when you look at a company like Grab, for example, Grab, which has a valuation of 40 billion, Grab has up to 80 investors on their cap table. So as we move on to the graph, it takes a total of 7 to 10 years for a leading company to achieve unicorn status. And as you can see from that chart, to give you an idea of the average time from birth and then from Series A level. And in 2019, this was the best year for companies to become a unicorn. It is predicted, though, that in 2021 will not be too bad of a year based on the numbers we are seeing coming through. On the next chart, as you can see, the main reason that is the case is that investors are deploying capital. They had to. They didn't invest that much last year. And for the past few months, we have seen on average 30 to 40 unicorns coming to market. So a massive spike during the past 3 months. And I'm just waiting for the last number from June, which I was not able to get for you today. But it is going higher and higher. And it is probably because of the need for digitization, as Kevin just highlighted a few moments ago. We have seen 3 to 5 years of digitization achieved in just 12 to 18 months. And investors know that. So what do they do, which is different? So I wanted to cover 4 main business models. So first, the tangible asset builders. They build, develop, and rent physical assets to market, make, distribute, and sell physical things. We have then the on-demand service providers, which are individuals able to provide value-added services, and this is usually service per the hour. The advanced technology architects is all about technology. They develop, market, sell intellectual property, such as advanced technology, with the blockchain, AI, particularly at the moment, quantum computing would be another example. Marketplace and network orchestrators combine the power of networks. Within the network, they use participants, which are the value creators, and they are able to sell products, service products, and also build new relationships. One thing which is happening right now, which Kevin alluded to, is sustainability is a big opportunity as well. So you see as well a lot of those ventures now looking at sustainable investment, financing, and now insurance as part of their proposition. So here are a few examples of what those companies do. So when you think about tangible asset builders, think about Tesla, right? Electric cars, electric batteries. InsurTech, Metromile is using on-board device, OBD, within their cars to monitor drivers' behaviors. When you think about on-demand service providers, think about services that are real-time or near real-time. This entails on-demand components as part of the proposition. You have Grab, which also has a wallet to drive embedded insurance services, and Ethos in the life sector. When you think about advanced technology providers, think about companies which build, as I mentioned earlier, big data, AI, the cloud, quantum computing, blockchain, all mixed together. I have two examples here, Security Scorecard in cyber and Chief Technology combining capabilities to solve for fraud and claims. When you think about marketplaces and network orchestrators, think about those who are joining the dot by including others as part of their ecosystem, optimizing distribution and the service they provide for the community. In Europe, we have Zego for gig economy mobility and Zebra in the United States for multi-insurance product distribution. So when you look at what they do differently, 5 things. First, they are doing a few things very well and deploy one single digital platforms. Focus is key. They personalize as part of their proposition and use digitization to improve the customer engagement, leaner, better, cheaper to scale. They are led by serial entrepreneurs. Failing is part of the proposition, and they actually learn through failing to deliver around more complex challenges. They are building the workforce and the workplace of the future. They start with very few employees, they iterate their minimum viable product, and then they scale right. And they are backed by major financiers and investors. They have to perform if they want to exit. But this is not that simple. So when you look at how those sectors create, now they are overlapping. So if you look at insurance, finance, and automotive, for example, think about Grab and Zego. When you think about home and climate and insurance, think about Hippo, Tesla. You also have Views and Ring Labs, for example, which was acquired by Amazon as well in the US. And then when you think about insurance, transportation, and sustainability, think about Tesla. All are doing things which aims to drive friction-free and embedded experiences, as well as serve underserved customer segments better. So my final world, in general, and regardless of business models, how performers look at their ecosystem. They are network orchestrator, they are driving value. They can achieve that 2 to 4 times higher valuation than their peers. And they are very few, only to less than 5% of companies globally are top market performers within that unicorn status. So now hand over to Beth. Remember, your customer is changing.
Thanks, Sabine. It's always exciting to hear your unique perspective on the industry. So what I would love to share with all of you today is some thoughts around what we have learned on our own innovation journey inside of Travelers. And Kevin mentioned earlier that we've been on this journey for a number of years. And during that time, we've had the experience and opportunity to learn a few things around what works and what doesn't work. So the first lesson, and we'll go through 6 lessons as we go through this presentation. The first one is to get outside. And in that, I mean, none of us have the ability to come up with truly great new ideas by sitting inside the 4 walls of our own company. And I think one of the first lessons we had to learn as Travelers was that we had an opportunity to go to and learn from others around what innovation means, where the opportunities are in the industry for us to pursue. And some of those places where we went to learn for that inspiration were those that are leading innovation in other industries, companies like Google, companies like Amazon. What could they help us understand and learn from their experience around what it means to be an innovative company? In some cases, we spent a lot of time with startup companies, and Sabine has mentioned what that startup industry looks like for insurance. We found we had a real opportunity to learn from those new companies, some of which were just getting started. They might have only been 1 or 2 companies, but they had a unique perspective on our industry and could help us reimagine and rethink what the problem and pain points are in our industry and where we might build a new value proposition collectively for our shared customers. We also spend a lot of time, we have UConn here today as a partner in this panel. I would say that we learn a lot from our educational partners. Not only the new ideas that the students can bring, but also the research that our partners inside of education are doing that are looking beyond the 3 to 5 year horizon that we tend to see our startup partners doing, but more of the 5 to 10 years. What should we be thinking further about? So the one sort of broad area there that I would say first and foremost as you're thinking about your innovation journey is find those areas where you can explore what the opportunities really might be and move outside of those 4 walls and move outside of traditional areas where you've gone for inspiration. Again, I would say our primary lens to the outside world has always been our important agency and broker partners, and we've continued to build on that and lean into it, but it's that plus what else? Where can we go to really understand the opportunities in the market? So if we move on to lesson number 2, that next lesson, and Sabine leaned into it, as did Kevin, is really our ability to listen to our customers. And there's that Bill Gates quote there that says, your most unhappy customers are your greatest source of learning. Within Travelers, and I have the opportunity to also lead our customer experience teams, we've had a really robust voice of the customer program, which has given us insight into where key pain points are. And as we started to look at that research, one of the things we saw was that our customers were really struggling with what we call our onboarding process, but becoming a customer of Travelers. And so we decided to dig deeper into what those pain points were. And so I thought I'd share with you a little bit of what we heard from our customers as we went into a deeper listening session with them.
I don't understand why there's so much paperwork. I don't understand why they can't condense it in some way. Even the format of the paperwork, why can't they make it to where it's like it's categorized, it's clearly categorized, and you know where to go? They could communicate it in a positive way, in a more positive way.
So you can hear there the pain from that customer, and that was a snippet from hundreds of hours of videos and interviews that we did with our customers. And so we spent a lot more time reimagining what that onboarding process would look like. But first we started with, what was she talking about? This is the paperwork that we tend to see in the onboarding process for our customers, right? Lots of policy documentation, lots of things to sign. But what if we reimagine that right from the very beginning? And we started with the idea of right at the point of quote. So as the customer is learning with our agent partners about what coverage options they might have, what could we offer them in terms of insight? How can we welcome them to Travelers and to their relationship with their agent in a welcoming way, in an email, in an interactive way, rather than through lots of paper? And what if the entire experience was digital, signing your documents, understanding your policies, and if we could present coverage in a visual way that was meaningful to a customer? So rather than talking about coverage A, explaining to our customers that it's really about replacing the value of your home. So we have continued to lean into that. We're actually in our 3rd iteration right now of innovating around the customer onboarding experience and continuing to try to make that truly an opportunity for welcoming the customer and ensuring that they have the coverage they need today and into the future. So if listening to our customers is lesson number 2, if we move on to lesson number 3, the next, I think key opportunity, and I saw some questions in the Q&A as well, how do you really think about moving at speed? The first thing is to set a challenge for yourself, right? And that might be bringing a new product to market inside of 3 or 4 months. It might be solving a problem that you never thought you could solve for. But it's that idea of saying, challenge yourself to do new things and challenge yourself to do things at speed. So in this case, what I thought I would share with you, and Kevin mentioned Traverse. This was a challenge that we set out for ourselves. For those of you that are familiar with our personal insurance product and the coverage that we offer, we tend to excel in the multi-product customers. Think married families with home and a car. But we have an opportunity to have more products and more solutions for new emerging risks. Millennial customers, now Gen Z customers that are new to insurance. And what we set out to look at was how can we bring a new product to market that speaks to that market's needs inside of 6 months. And again, we started with understanding the problem. And so I thought I'd share with you what these customers told us about their thoughts on insurance.
So the idea of insurance as something that's like, it's been like it's a ripoff.
Do you have insurance, by the way?
I don't even know where I would start with that.
Okay.
So one of our biggest insights through that process of working closely with customers, and primarily in the New York area, was that those customers didn't understand the value of insurance. They certainly didn't understand the value of renter's insurance. Their perception of that was that it was something that their landlords made them take, not something that added value to them. And so we took a step back and said, what is really the key things that they're looking to cover for themselves? And what we learned was that they were really looking for coverage for the things that they loved, the valuable assets to them, their phones, their laptops, their bags, their shoes, their golf clubs. The things that helped them experience life were the things that were the most important to them. And so we put together a new product. It's a product called Traverse. We entered it into the New York market with the idea of allowing millennials to select the coverage that they were looking for and to cover the things, the events, the experiences that were the most important to them. And we got a lot of attention on that because it was truly a new market for us. We had a good experience in New York, but what I'll now say is we also learned some things along the way, which is lesson number 4. And that lesson is prepare to be wrong. So as excited as we were about the product, we also learned once we launched the product into market that there were some things we needed to change about that product. And I think this is for insurance carriers probably one of the biggest lessons that we all need to learn, which is if we want to move at the pace of change, if we want to move at the pace of startups, we have to be willing to put things into market quickly and then be willing to continue to evolve them over time. So the 100% perfect before it goes in really will take too long. And by the time we get that market in, the solution into the market, the problem will have changed. So this idea that success is not final and failure is not fatal, it's the courage to continue, really resonated with the team that brought Traverse to market. Because one of the things that we quickly learned is as insurance providers, we felt that it was really important to make sure that every base product had liability coverage in the product. What we learned was that that just didn't resonate with this market. They might want liability and they might choose to add it in, but they wanted the choice. And so we completely unbundled the product entirely. Customers can choose to add liability. They can cover 1 item, 10 items. They can choose to buy identity theft. It's really their opportunity to say what's important to me and how do I want to cover those things. We've since pivoted the product. We brought it now into Texas as well, and we continue to see quite a bit of success in that marketplace. And we're looking for expansion of that product into other states in the not too distant future. So it's really about that idea of learning from those failures and saying, how do I continue to move the product and the solution forward? So with that, we'll move right on to lesson number 5, which I think probably everyone in the innovation space will say this in one way or another, but it's let's fall in love with the problem and not the solution. And you see the quote down there below from Steve Jobs, which says innovation comes from saying no to 1,000 things. I will say, and Sabine and I spent a lot of time with the startup community here in Hartford, there isn't a solution that I have seen that I don't love. I love them all. I think that the startup companies that we have interacted with bring some new idea that we haven't thought with. But that doesn't mean I want to put them all into our business, because they don't solve the problems that I have. So the real challenge for us as innovators is to make sure that we're spending more time understanding the problem that we're trying to solve for than trying to put the solution in, or finding a great solution and trying to figure out where it fits. And I will say my partners in claim, if we move on to the next slide, are probably some of the best in the industry at doing this. If I look at our travelers claim team, they are exceptional at really thinking through the problems and the challenges of solving for a claim event through every part of the process, understanding how to get people to the event and to the claimants that have a challenge, understanding how to support our claimants through the process of reporting damage, making sure that we can assess and pay out on that, and then help support the repair process. And so that team thinks every day about what's the problem I'm trying to solve for, and then how do I bring new solutions that, as Kevin mentioned earlier, can bring down the cost and the expense of serving that claim, but also significantly improve the customer experience and the speed by which we can do that. And they are not running after the next technology solution, but rather saying, how do those solutions fit into the business problem and the customer problem that I'm trying to solve for? So my lesson number 5 there would be spend more time on really understanding the problem and breaking it down, and then finding ways to create solutions that meet that problem's core essence. And then lastly, the last lesson, number 6, is that innovators are everywhere. We started down this journey, and I think there was a bit of a question of, do we have this idea of the nebulous innovative people in travelers? And my answer is fundamentally yes. I think that our challenge as leaders is to untap that innovation creativity across all of our teams and look for the opportunity to bring all of our employees into that spirit of innovation. What you see there on the slide is a picture of what we call our InJam. Kevin and his team run every year an innovation jam across travelers. This year, we're just in the start of it right now, and Kevin can check me on the numbers, but we run upwards of close to 1,000 employees being engaged in the InJam every year. And that opportunity to really think about bringing people together, helping them really explore a problem and come up with creative new ideas on how to attack them has been delivered real value to the business, but has also given our employees an opportunity to think about new ways to explore a problem set. Within personal insurance, we've done a lot of work when we do different types of innovation efforts. We make a lot of effort to make sure that we're bringing people across all of our functional areas and from different teams to come be a part of that, either for 3 months or 6 months or 8 months. And that gives us the opportunity to send them back to their day jobs and use the skills they've learned in their everyday work. So the key message here is there's no magic person out there that is an innovator. It's really about how do we give individuals the opportunity in this space to be innovative. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Joan.
Okay, terrific. Beth, Sabine, and Kevin, I mean, so much food for thought here. Very, very interesting, and in different presentations on the forces of change. So let's get right into it. We're going to ask the audience one more question, folks, and please put your questions for our panelists in the Q&A function there. We have a few coming in. So the next question we have, which of the forces of change is most relevant for your organization where you're working right now? So changing risk and products, changing distribution, of course, for all our agents online, the impact of digitization and AI. Those are 3 very different forces of change, and let's see where our results have come in. And then I want to ask each of our panelists to kind of talk about this for a second. So the forces of change, changing risk and products, changing distribution seem to be coming in, and artificial intelligence as well. That seems to have taken the digitization and AI. You want to speak to that, Sabine? Were you surprised by these results here?
I'm not surprised because the past years we have seen an acceleration of digitization. And I can talk about investors. Investors have realized there's even more opportunity coming through 3 to 5 years achieve in 12 to 18 months. So everybody had to digitize. And then when you look at how it's done either through automation, RPAs, robotic process automation. So your AI or risks is actually, and analytics is part of AI as well. And then lastly, your bots, your engagement bots, which allows you to respond to client without using human effort. So yes, I can see that being important, but all of them are interconnected a little bit, I think.
Kevin, anything surprising you here? What about distribution? Did you think it would have come in more?
No, not surprising. I mean, I think all of them are pretty significant forces. So it probably determined by the demographics of your audience, Joan.
Yeah. Okay, another audience question, then we're going to get into some other conversations. So how much funding did InsurTech companies receive in 2020? So even during the pandemic, how much funding, VC funding, this is all funding, all in for InsurTech companies. So what is your best guess here in our audience? All right, coming in on the higher end, it looks like. So say between 5 and 7 billion. So Sabine, what is the right number here and why?
It's 7.1 billion. Why? Well, despite the fact that we had some challenges, investment came through last year in 2020. A lot of investors found out that actually there were amazing companies to invest in. And a lot of those investments went into very strong and solid companies. Now, if you look at just this year, I checked the numbers before coming on to this webinar, nearly 9 billion has already been invested in InsurTechs to date. So that number will be surpassed this year. And then when you look at this within the context of FinTech, we are a drop in the water. We're only 10%. But imagine, 500 billion is invested in FinTech and 89 billion has already been invested in FinTech startup to date.
Great. All right, so let's get into some of the content here. Beth, I want to talk about your presentation. You said that some of the mechanisms for identifying areas that are really ripe for innovation. You showed us that hilarious video about customers talking about paperwork everywhere. But what have you found the best insights or inspirations for starting those innovation projects, or forecasting where the customer friction points are? So if the organizations that are listening in today, what are the baby steps to get started for identifying the areas that are ripe for innovation?
Yeah, I would go back. The baby steps of where they're right for all of us really does need to be with listening to our customers. We have to. That's got to be sort of step number one. The second step for that, though, I think is, again, challenging ourselves to get out of where we are today and start talking to those that could help us. I think when I think of our agents and our brokers, and I know a number of them out there are doing it exceptionally well, Joan, because they're asking us to help, is who are their partners that are bringing them the business? So what can mortgage companies and realtors in the personal insurance space tell them about what their needs are and how they're thinking about changing the customer experience? Who are the ecosystem players in their area that can share with them their own business model and can co-create with them on new opportunities for solutions for shared customers? I guess I can't stress enough trying to seek out people outside of your four walls that have a point of view around what you're doing in your business and how you might change it or improve it. So I think it's a lot of those opportunities to really think about what else are you missing, and who can help you identify those areas that you might be missing.
Okay, thanks. Sabine, question to you about failure, and you've been in the innovation business for a long time here. Can you talk about failure in the context of innovation? What's a healthy mindset for people listening in today about failure? Because you're taught in school failure is not a good thing, but when you're trying to innovate, it's a good thing. And how many times do you get to fail before you have that one success?
When you look at it from an entrepreneur and founder viewpoint, everybody wants to succeed first time around, but failure is part of building a backbone. So the way I think we need to look at failure is as a learning opportunity, and every time we fail, we need to capture this information to actually build stronger and better propositions and iterate over time. And I believe Beth and Kevin highlighted that through any organization journey, you are going to have successes and you just have to iterate to actually get it right. So I think it's about also building humility around understanding what clients need and building some level of authenticity as well towards the customer. From I was seeing a big company's viewpoint, I know it's not good to fail, and no one wants to talk about failure, but I look at it as a way to codify and democratize knowledge. Because when you can actually enable people within your teams and across the business to participate to innovation, things which didn't work the first time around will probably work the second time around. And one additional point that both Kevin and Beth highlighted is our customers are changing. And when you start actually seeing how to respond to the customer, you will never get it always right the first time around, because you need to have the people who actually empathize with the customer to limit potential for failure.
Okay, thank you for that. So Kevin, you ran our international operations for many years, and you've led a delegation from Travelers of senior business people going to look at innovative companies around the world in the last 5 years or so. So what is the biggest catalyst for driving innovation into our business agenda? So you're head of innovation, but you have to be embedded in the businesses and help them understand that innovation is the key to their next success. So how does that work? Kind of the internal salesman, if you will.
For sure. No, I actually think, and first of all, I would say every organization is different. Every culture is different. The way company A and company B, the way they're wired, they're all different. And so I'm always hesitant to suggest that anything might be a rule, right? But I do think, as we think about Travelers, I think the biggest catalyst for us has been getting organizational alignment from the top down, and having the organization really rally behind the direction that we're trying to take with our innovation activities. It's easy to run around and with great urgency and innovate, but it's another thing to actually be focused in the right areas. And I think the fact that we've really worked with the senior-most level of the organization to get a common view on what our strategic direction needs to be around a lot of these topics, that's allowed us to sort of line up the organization behind that and focus our resources accordingly. So I think that's been the most powerful catalyst to our ability to get things done. Besides, of course, the fantastic folks like Beth Maerz, who are just tremendous catalysts in their own right as they drive their agendas.
Great. Thanks for that. So we're going to get some audience questions in now. We're going to do some rapid fire things. Sabine, this is to you. When's the inflection point when you decide to scale a company or project or product, versus saying, this isn't working, I'm going to try something else? Is it always clear to your clients and those you work that inflection point, or how do you decide when you should move on?
Well, working with a lot of startups, I think there is some aspect of a gut feel when something is not working. But if you actually use also the theory, usually products need to iterate every 8 to 12 weeks. So, and it needs to be validated with customers. So often the reason why, ideas fail is poor product market fit. It's about the fact that we have a poor customer engagement journey. The client is not responding to the offer. And so you have signals, that the product is not working. I would say when we look at it from a startup viewpoint, when we did the accelerator, we will actually do it every 3 months. So I would say 3 months would be my limit to see whether something is working or not. When you look at more sophisticated products, you would actually can go up to 12 months, particularly because you need to test it in the market. When you look at it from an investor viewpoint, they calculate, early stage 0 to 3, and then they move to 5, and then they move to 7. So that is another indicator. Not more than 3 years, but in startup years, I would say 12 months would be maximum.
Okay, terrific. Thanks for that. Kevin, this is for you, coming in from one of my favorite people, Ronnie Tubertini in Mississippi. So Kevin, considering the changes in distribution in the future due to customer preferences, alternative platforms, and consolidation, assuming Travelers is evaluating and studying the agency of the future and its distribution forecast. So what does the agency of the future look like in your view?
Agile, frictionless, and ever so much focused on the customer. Now, honestly, I don't think we have enough time left to talk about that. But what I will say is that we've got a group of people that are actually very much focused on that and working with our distribution partners to help them figure out what that means for each of them. And so, I mean, we could actually do a whole hour on that, Joan, I think.
Okay, Ronnie will give you a call and follow up with that. Another question: what is a full stack player?
Full stack player is basically it's an insurtech that has sort of gone on from being distribution only to actually providing their own insurance capacity. So they've got the full stack of capabilities from distribution all the way through to capital to actually take risk and handle claims, et cetera.
All right, another question, probably to you, Kevin or Beth. How does Travelers gather all of these ideas? Do you have a platform like brightidea.com? Or is it our Innovation Jam that you get the ideas and then you gather the winners, as there's winners, losers in Innovation Jam? How does it work, Kevin?
Yeah, well, the Innovation Jam is basically is one area that we try to generate, ideas from. We typically focus the topic area to make sure that we're getting ideas generated in areas that we've got real interest in investing in. We use a variety of mechanisms to do that, but we do use that as sort of a central rallying point, sort of cross organizationally. Now, Beth in personal insurance probably has some other things she does as she drives into idea generation throughout the course of her day.
Yeah, I mean, I going back to some of the learnings that we've had is the teams really do try to focus on the problem and then pull the ideas around the solution set into that. So the teams are really owning those ideas, so to speak. But Kevin, I think your team has done a nice job cross enterprise of creating platforms like Kite and others that allow us to share ideas about companies across that. I think it's really got to be whatever works for you and for your own organization. We use a host of platforms technology-wise to support that sharing. Teams is one of them, but I think it really depends on who you are and how you're getting your process and your project done.
All right, Sabine, a question for you. Fast forward 5 years. What do you see for the insurance industry? What do you think the biggest changes happening in the insurance industry?
I think we are going to see more companies doing like what Beth did with Travelers. I think there will be more collaboration ecosystems. So when you start looking at where the world is going, ecosystems is not just an interesting world, but it's an important word now in our industry, where insurance companies are realizing that to accelerate their ability to grow, they need to build growth ecosystems, so work with growth startups, which allow them to move much faster. So that is the first point. Then you are going to see more ventures, more big companies looking at building growth ventures as well, and putting the capabilities together to do that, because not everything exists. I mentioned the overlapping circle. Some insurance company realize they need to enter new market to acquire new customers. And lastly, embedded. I think the embedded finance we've seen a few years back is coming to us now too.
Okay, great. I cannot thank our partners enough and our speakers, but we have run out of time, and I would love to continue this conversation. Maybe in 6 months we'll reconvene and have you back and hear the new innovative ideas that are out there. So listen, thank you, all three of you.